One of the most important jobs we were doing, I would say by far the most important at Farnborough in the war years, was transonic testing. Now, you realize that a piston engine aircraft can never go supersonic because of the drag of the propeller. But when you're fighting an enemy, you always want to have a margin of performance over their aircraft. And the idea was to get to as high a Mach number as possible. Now, Mach 1 is the speed of sound. So if you talk about Mach 0.75, that's 3/4 of the speed of sound, and so on. So it's all got to be below 1 if it's piston engine.
What has the speed of sound to do with high-speed flying? To find out, let's consider first a single point sending out small pressure waves continuously. Each wave travels outwards at the speed of sound. Now suppose the point itself is moving. If its speed is less than the speed of sound, the pressure waves still travel out ahead. But if the point is traveling at the speed of sound, the pressure waves cannot travel out ahead of it, for the point is traveling as fast as they are. This is the kind of way in which the speed of sound affects high-speed aircraft. And therefore, at high speeds, the exact relation between the speed of an aircraft and the speed of sound is important. But remember, the speed of sound varies with temperature, and therefore with altitude. It's considerably lower in the stratosphere than at sea level.
Now, we had captured 2 German types of aircraft, fighter aircraft, that had landed inadvertently or crash landed in this country, namely the Focke-Wulf 190 and the Messerschmitt 109. And in our tests, we knew that these aircraft could fight at a Mach number of 0.75. Now that is called the tactical Mach number, the Mach number at which you can fight, the maximum at which you can fight. There's a tactical Mach number and a critical Mach number. The critical Mach number is the one which is well beyond the tactical one, and it's the one at which, if you get that far, you have lost control of the aircraft.
Let us consider the airflow around a wing. This wing section is symmetrical like most modern wings. It is in typical flying attitude. The air is slowed down at the nose to form what is called the stagnation region. It speeds up as it passes around the curvature of the wing. It slows down again towards the trailing edge. These changes of speed cause changes in the air pressure. The yellow regions show reduced, and the green increased pressure. All these variations in pressure together produce lift and drag. The airflow speeds up as it passes over the wing and reaches its maximum speed at a certain point. The Mach number here will always be greater than that of the aircraft as a whole, called the flight Mach number. As the flight Mach number increases, so does the local Mach number at the maximum speed-up point. Eventually, though the aircraft as a whole is flying at less than the speed of sound, just at this point on the wing, the air is moving at the speed of sound. The flight Mach number, when this happens, is called the critical Mach number of the aircraft, usually written M crit. For any wing section, M crit will always be less than 1.
We told them what the tactical Mach numbers and whatnot is, but that was no use because in World War II, throughout the war, not a single Allied fighter ever had a Mach meter fitted in it. Mach meters were only fitted in experimental test aircraft. So what we had to do, in the cockpits, the Americans and our people had a list of speed against height. So we'd tell them when not to exceed that. Of course, that's a fat body use. If you've got a German up your tail and in the middle of combat up there, you're not going to sit and look at your chart and say, oh, I'm at so-and-so height and so-and-so speed. You know, I've got a trouble here, haven't I? Now, it's no good. So we had to tell them what the characteristics were of the flight, that they would fuel in the airplane that would tell them they are approaching trouble and better get out of it fast. So that was the job we had to do.
At low speeds, the air behaves as if it were incompressible. Whatever pressure changes there are so slight as to cause no color change. But as speed increases, the air does begin to show signs of compressibility. The colors show regions of increasing and decreasing density. The red area at the leading edge is the stagnation region, where the air is being slowed down and becoming denser. Immediately behind are two blue areas where the rate of speeding up is greatest, causing a reduction in density. This diagram will remind us of what's happening. As the flight Mach number increases, the flow at the point of maximum speed up on the wing reaches Mach 1, the speed of sound. The wing has reached its critical Mach number. And when this is exceeded, a sudden, sharp region of increasing density forms on the wing just behind the point of maximum speed up. This is a shock wave. It is a sudden jump in the pressure of the air. It grows and moves back as the Mach number increases.
What caused the whole situation in the European war to change was this. The B-17 Flying Fortress, that projected the war in Europe from an altitude, we were fighting at altitudes of 15 to 20,000 feet, normally speaking. Suddenly, this airplane projected the war up to 30,000 feet. So it was a new ballgame. And they, at first, thought that these aircraft could look after themselves. They were very heavily defended, a lot of guns, and they had a theory that if they all stuck in close formation, they would have the firepower to survive. I'm afraid this didn't work out at all. And the first raid they made like this was against Schweinfurt, the ball-bearing works in Germany, and they took 600 forts and lost 60. Now, you cannot afford a loss rate like that, because in each of these aircraft there are 10 men. So you lose 60 aircraft, 600 men gone. And they thought about it and decided that it was just a bit of bad luck. So this happened in August 1943. So they decided to make another raid against Schweinfurt under the same basis in October 1943. Same numbers of aircraft, same target. Unfortunately, same result. Magic figure of 60 is quite coincidental. There were 60 on each occasion lost. Again, another 600 men. Quite unsustainable. So it was decided they must have escort fighters.
How are shock waves formed? On the rear part of the wing, every point, such as this one, sends out innumerable tiny pressure waves at the speed of sound. In the forward direction, these waves meet airflow in the opposite direction and make less and less progress until they reach a stage where they can't travel any further forward because the airflow itself is moving backwards supersonically. It's like trying to step off an escalator going the wrong way. The pressure waves constantly pile up here, and this is the shock wave. A shock wave is a very narrow region, about 1/10,000th of an inch thick. Across this region, the supersonic airflow is violently reduced to subsonic speeds. Much of the air's energy of movement, or kinetic energy, is dissipated as heat. The temperature of the air rises suddenly as it passes through the shock wave. There is also a sudden rise in pressure.
They introduced as their first fighter the Lockheed Lightning. Secondly, they had this aircraft, the P-47 Thunderbolt, and neither of these two were a success at all. And Jimmy Doolittle, same one that was involved in this raid to Turkey, was then the boss of the fighter units in the 8th United States Army Air Force. And he came to Farnborough and he said, I'm getting very disconcerting reports from the tail gunners in my fortresses that when these Lightnings and Thunderbolts, which were acting as top cover for the forts, flying 2,000 feet above them, so that if the forts were attacked, they could dive down on the enemy fighters, have the advantage of height. And he said they're diving down towards the Germans, but just passing them and going straight on. That's the last we see them. They're disappearing into oblivion. Sad fact was they were making big holes in the ground in Germany. And what was going on? Why were they all disappearing like this? And he sent a Lightning and a Thunderbolt to Farnborough, and we tested them out.
As the speed of airflow is increased still further, the region of supersonic flow goes on growing larger, and a second supersonic region starts to form on the lower surface of the wing with another shock wave. Shock waves cause a vast increase in drag and may cause serious control troubles. At speeds approaching the speed of sound, the most important result of the shock wave is to cause the airflow to separate from the wing surface. This is called shock-induced separation. It produces a large turbulent wake, which alters the pressure distribution. Lift is reduced, and the turbulence creates drag.
Now remember, the Germans could fight at Mach 0.75. The Lightning had a tactical Mach number of 0.68. Useless. The Thunderbolt had a tactical Mach number of 0.71. Again, useless. And we had to tell these sad facts to the Americans. So there we are. Doolittle realized that neither of his fighters were any good. The Thunderbolt was very good at ground attack, and they was withdrawn into that role. They withdrew the Lightnings from this escort duty and put them on reconnaissance work. Now you may wonder at this because the Lightning distinguished itself in the Far East. Indeed, the top two American aces in the whole war were flying Lightnings in the Far East. What was the difference? The difference was simple as this. The fight in Europe was taking place at 30,000 feet. The fight in the Far East never got much above 15,000. So, because it was mainly a carrier battle. So that is the big difference.
The thinner the wing, the less the air is speeded up, and so the critical Mach number is raised. These two wings are of the same general shape and of the same angle of incidence. The tunnel speed is the same for each. As it increases, the shock wave forms on the thicker wing at a Mach number of 0.8, but not a sign yet on the thinner one. Here it comes at last, at a Mach number of 0.9. But wings can't be made too thin or the landing speed would be too high.
So what was going to solve the problem? Well, at that time, the problem was solved by this wonderful aircraft, the Mustang. Now, the P-51, the Mustang, was unusual in the fact that it had a laminar flow wing, very, very thin wing, as you can see. And of course, that is the clue to getting higher speed. It also, at first, when it came out, had a rather useless engine in the American Allison engine, which was no good at high altitude. So, Britain saved it by re-engineering it with the Rolls-Royce Merlin and converted what was a very mediocre fighter into one of the best fighters in World War II. Certainly the best escort fighter. Now, it had a tactical Mach number of 0.78, above the 0.75 of the Germans.
Here, slowed up about 40 times, is a Schlieren picture of what may happen to an aileron as a result of shock waves. The most striking effect of shock waves is a sudden, very sharp increase in the aircraft's drag. This is because the shock wave heats up the air and compresses it, and this absorbs a lot of extra energy, which has to be continuously supplied by the engines. The rate at which the drag increases is itself highest somewhere around Mach 1, although the actual drag goes on growing all the time. This sudden increase in drag above the critical Mach number is what used to be meant by the sound barrier.
Now, our own Spitfire was superior to all these. It had a tactical Mach number of 0.80. Now, normally speaking, roughly speaking, the difference between your tactical Mach number and your critical Mach number was about 0.02. For example, if you had Germans have a tactical Mach number of 0.75, that critical Mach number is about 0.77. Spitfire, however, so it had a tactical Mach number of 0.8, had a critical Mach number as could go any height depending on the strength of the pilot pulling on the stick. And we at Farnborough did an experiment on this. And this was a Spitfire PR-11. He dived it from 45,000 feet down to 28,000 feet. Now, he was a huge man. He weighed 17 stone. He was 6'2". And he could pull a good 100 pounds on the stick. My limit was about 60, 65 pounds. And at 28,000 pounds, he started to try and pull out. And as he pulled on the stick, there was a colossal bang, and away went the propeller, and most of the reduction gear with it, all missing there, as you see. And because these came off, the centre of gravity walked out in the pole at the tail, really. And he came out at 11G. Now, this is recorded. This was fully instrumented, this airplane. And as you know, the top G that the Spitfire is supposed to break up at is 10G. And here we actually recorded 11. And when he came to, of course, he was blacked out, the shutters came down, and he found himself up at about, back up at 42,000 feet. And without a propeller and covered in oil. But he got his wits together and said to us that he reckoned if he could work the emergency gear on the undercarriage, he could land the aircraft back at Farnborough, which indeed he did. And I ran out to meet him, and here's the astonishing thing. But right where the wing meets the fuselage, at the root of the wing, to my utter astonishment, there was a gap of 3 inches at both wings. In other words, he had slightly swept the wings back. And that Mach number he attained in that dive was 0.92. Unbelievable, really. And that is, to this day, the highest speed ever attained in any piston-engined aircraft. That was on the 27th of April, 1944.